That went faster than I thought. Well, awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Seth Bush. I am the advocacy manager at Bike Pittsburgh. We are a advocacy organization working to make our streets safer for people who bike, of course, people who walk, people who use wheelchairs and mobility aids, people who are trying to get to the bus. We do a lot of great advocacy work. I help support a network of bike and ped advocacy groups spread out all over the city and into the county. Several of you are part of those groups. And we also do some really cool community events, a lot of educational programming. Of course, you can learn more on our website, www.bikepgh.org. And if you get something out of this tonight, I also hope you'll consider becoming a member of Bike Pittsburgh if you're not already. Help support us to keep doing good work like this. So that's me. I think my colleague, our advocacy director, Eric Borer, had to hop off so that he can handle some internet stuff, but he'll be back and he'll introduce himself. So when you see Eric, you'll know he's our fellow Bike Pittsburgh staff person. Why are we here tonight? The bottom line is that infrastructure changes only really happen if they are budgeted and planned for, right? And we might be running all sorts of campaigns all over the place. We might be working on a project for a long time, but the big stuff doesn't happen if the money doesn't show up to make it happen. And there are two specific opportunities that we want to tell you about tonight that, again, there are a lot of different tactics you might use in your campaign, but these two are almost kind of like keystone type tactics that you can really build some other tactics and build your campaign around. And that's the capital budget process and the paving schedule. And as advocates, we really need to be well versed in how to leverage both opportunities as tactics in our overarching strategy for getting the changes that we want. And like I already said, with the caveat that these aren't our only tactics, there is more that we can and should be doing as advocates to build power and win our campaigns. And if you want to learn more about how to develop that strategy, talk to me, come to one of our advocacy booster calls that we have monthly, where we can really get into the details for your campaign and crafting advocacy strategies. On June 1st, we're going to be doing a full day strategies for winning campaigns training. Of course, that's going to be about bike and pet issues, but we've had a lot of people go through that training and say, wow, this is really useful for advocacy in any kind of civic engagement. So that'll be June 1st, all day. So save the date. We'd love to have everybody here at that training in June. But tonight, we have a couple of learning objectives. And those learning objectives are what the capital budget is and how it's developed over the course of a year, how you can engage with each step of that process as advocates, right? And then also what the paving schedule is, how to read it, how to use it to call for smaller changes in the capital budget, but still really impactful changes that open up and opportunities that open up when the street is repaved. So what we're going to do is Eric and I each have a 10 to 15-ish minute presentation with time for question and answer after each. So we're going to do a little download of the knowledge that we've gathered over many, many years collectively, Eric, the most collectively, of doing this work. And after each of those presentations, we'll have some time for question and answer. So please hold your questions. Or if you have questions that you want to put in the chat, go ahead and do that. Eric will keep track of them during my presentation. I'll keep track of them during his, so we can talk about them during the Q&A. At the end, if we have time, we'll break out into pairs and talk a little bit about what we're learning together and share some actions that we plan to take. So it's not just us talking at you. We can have some conversation together. So that's the plan. Eric, now that you're back, do you want to introduce yourself and so we know who you are?
Hey, everybody. Good evening. I'm Eric Borer. I'm the advocacy director of Bike Pittsburgh. And I missed the past 5 minutes because I was having some internet issues, but I'm back. But Seth, if you can make me a co-host again, that would be
Yeah.
helpful. Anyway, yeah, great. Thanks for everybody for showing up. I'm not going to belabor this part.
I am making you a co-host right now. You should have the power. Great.
I've got the power.
All righty, folks. Yeah, just looking at some of the stuff in the chat too, really appreciating people here to learn ways to address the issues they see in their neighborhood, looking to learn more about advocating and working with the city, wanting to bring things from idea to implementation. Elise, I'm so glad that you're here. I know you're not from the city, you're from Churchill, but you're very involved with your active transportation planning process over there in Churchill. So I imagine talking about plans and budgets might be useful for you tonight.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to join because we just recently started kicking this off in January. We actually had our first meeting end of January, and we just actually had a community meeting last night. So
Amazing.
I'm really kind of getting more involved in it. I just want to learn what you guys have to say.
Fantastic. And you and I might want to talk shop at some point too, because Swissvale is about to apply for the same grant to get.
Oh, awesome. Okay, cool.
Yep. Well, let's get started, folks, looking at the city's capital budget. I'm going to share my screen here. Oop. When I want to reconfigure, Zoom always gets all kind of wonky whenever I share my screen, and I want to see all of you at the same time. There we go. Perfect. Okie dokie. All righty. So we're talking about the capital budget. And what what is a capital budget? Really, I'm going to read kind of the definition from the city of Pittsburgh that is summarized on these points that I think really hits it home. The capital budget, it allocates public monies, our tax dollars, and also some other funding that comes through grants and other channels to projects that design, build, restore, retain, or purchase any city-owned asset that is expected to provide a long-term benefit or propose physical improvements in an element of the city's infrastructure. And an important part about the capital budget is it's big things. It's stuff that you can touch most often, stuff that has a minimum value of $50,000 and a minimum useful life of 5 years. So we're talking streets, paving, bike lanes, complete streets, bridges, steps, purchasing vehicles for the parks department. We're talking, all of these kind of really big, tangible type projects. And what's important about the capital budget is it's not just a boring document. It really reflects the priorities of our city. It reflects what's important to our city. And as such, it's really important that we have public participation, because if all of the things about the capital budget get decided without public input, the values of the city are not going to reflect the people of the city. And the actual things that we utilize every day are not going to reflect what we need. So public participation is super important, especially because we should have a say in how our tax dollars are spent, right? And fortunately, at least right now, and in the recent history, we've had a mayor who has wanted to listen to the people and facilitated some very robust community engagement processes. And a lot of council people, have been pretty engaged in this process as well. Hopefully your council person does too. So really important for us to be involved broadly. And there are a number of opportunities for helping to shape the capital budget, and three in particular that we want to highlight here. The most important, we think, is engaging with your council person. And this involves a lot of things, but especially sending a capital budget request letter. That's kind of the keystone tactic we're going to talk about tonight. Scheduling a meeting with your council person, inviting them to a walk audit, talking to them at events. There are all sorts of opportunities to engage with your council person. You want to consistently be talking to them about the things that you want to see happen, because ultimately you will make a request to your council person. Your council person will submit those requests to the mayor. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be chosen, but if your council person makes a strong case for you, it stands a much better chance. So you want to make a strong case to your council person for the kind of change that you want to see. And then even after the mayor proposes their budget, your council person is going to be part of council, which finally approves the budget. So being engaged there is the most important avenue to shaping what actually gets included and funded in the capital budget. We also have two other opportunities. One is very simple. every year on the Engage page, that's engage.pittsburgh.gov, I believe. There's a survey open on what are the issues and what are the things that you want to see funded with a capital budget. So that's always important to have everybody who you know who cares about these things to be a part of. And then also there are usually public meetings, some in the spring to kind of get a first initial sense of what needs to happen. And then again in the fall when the mayor proposes his budget and there's an opportunity for feedback. So we will keep you posted about when these things actually get announced and when they get on the calendar, but I want you to get an overview of what are these engagement opportunities. So then, of course, we have a really important role as bike and pedestrian advocates in particular. And what that role involves is be the squeaky wheel, right? It's up to us. We know our communities and we know our neighborhoods best. And if we don't speak up about the problems that we see and the opportunities that we see, nobody's really going to pay attention to them. And so we need to be calling attention to the bike and pedestrian safety issues that need to be addressed through that infrastructure investment. And hopefully that leads to the specific investment we're asking for, but almost as important, if not sometimes more important, even if your project isn't picked, making requests in the capital budget, being that squeaky wheel, will add to the pressure that our elected officials feel to maintain, if not expand, the overall amount of funding for safe streets. That's what we mean by growing the pie of funding that's available for these complete streets projects. And, this is working. The advocacy that Bike Pittsburgh and Bike Ped committees have been doing over the past decade plus, especially engaging with the capital budget, we've seen it appreciably grow. I think just this past year, we've seen a huge investment in neighborhood traffic calming, which is largely a result of people being squeaky wheels and saying, hey, we need safer communities, we need safer streets. And so really, you're asking for the projects you want. You're also part of a broader movement that is helping to show that we really need investment across the board. This is super important, folks, this upcoming year, because COVID relief funding is running out after this year. That means budgets are going to be tightening a bit, which means that there's going to be higher competition for the dollars that are in play. And we really need to be squeaky wheels about bike and pedestrian safety to ensure that our pie stays the same, if not grows, because this stuff is super, super important.
I'll add one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, so I want to add one quick thing that is for growing the pie. We've been really paying attention to the capital budget for a really long time. And when we started really paying attention to it, we were talking like these improvements, the city was investing like, if we got $100,000, that was a lot of money. Now we're in the millions of dollars per year toward safety improvements. So all this work that everyone's been doing over the years, asking for these changes in the capital budget is working.
And I know some of you here have been part of capital budget processes before. I know it can feel like shouting into the wind, into the void sometimes, but Eric's example just now, I think, is a really important thing to remember, that it's not just shouting into the wind. It is again, helping to push for more funding across the board because we're keeping that pressure up. Also, our role as advocates is to be strategic. And when we're strategic, we know that we don't rely on just one tactic to get the goods. And so think of the capital budget as one of many tactics in a larger campaign. You're going to need to do more to be successful. Although this is a pretty important piece that, any advocate should be paying attention to the capital budget process, and any advocate should be doing more than paying attention to the capital budget process. So keeping that in mind. Let's look at what the process actually involves. There's a cycle here, and it really does end up taking up the whole year. In January, it's the start of the fiscal year. We get like January, February, maybe a little bit of March to just like take a breath after the last budget cycle and kind of wait for things to kick back up again. But really, we should be starting to think about what are the projects we want to advocate this upcoming year, collecting data, making the case, because in the spring, they're going to start public meetings. They're going to open those surveys. We're going to want to start talking to our council people and presenting a pretty well-informed idea of what we want throughout that summer and that public engagement process. After that initial engagement process, council people and department directors submit their requests to the Office of the Mayor's Budget, which then they take all of those requests, they score them, they analyze them, And sometime in early September, the mayor then submits a preliminary budget that says, all right, this is what I'm thinking. It's kind of a draft. And there are more public meetings, more public engagement to give some feedback. The Office of the Mayor's budget makes some tweaks, some adjustments. Then he formally presents his recommendations, his draft budget to council. They then rework it, pick it apart, put it back together again, and the council is who finally approves the budget, and we start all over again in January. I want to focus on, again, what I've been calling this like keystone part of this whole thing, which is what it is that is getting submitted to the mayor's office. And the way that we inform that is sending a capital budget request letter to our council people. We as residents, as citizens, as advocates rather, we submit capital budget request letter to the council members. Hopefully, they then take one or some of the things that we've asked for, submit it in their package of proposals and requests to the mayor, and then hopefully the mayor takes the things that we want out of that and puts that in his budget. And so, it is a process. It's not a guarantee that it's going to get in the budget if your council person chooses it, but it is a super important step in the process. And really, they're your liaison. They're the person to be interfacing with to ensure your stuff gets in the capital budget. And hopefully you can turn them into a champion. So they're not just submitting a proposal, but they are sticking with it all the way through and helping to champion it. The way that we do that is send a really compelling letter. And so this is a formal letter, typically from an established group, a bike ped advocacy, a bike ped committee, a registered community organization, or a community development corporation, asking for the investments that you think are needed in your community. It's addressed to your council person. And this letter, it's really important to use, though, because the mayor is going to be assessing and selecting from the requests that he gets from council people. He usually publishes a set of priorities of like, this is what I want to focus on for the year. And it's important to use that as a template of sorts for your request. We don't know what these are yet, but you'll know as soon as we do. As there's an announcement, we'll make sure to share it with you. I'll also add that it's really important when you send your letter to copy some key people on your letter. So the director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, Kim Lucas, your neighborhood planner. You want to copy these people in particular because the director of DOMI, Kim Lucas, especially, might also be able to include parts of your request, in what she submits. In what DOMI submits for funding, right? It's important for them to see what are the community asking for. And then also copy Bike Pittsburgh and other relevant partners because that adds some gravitas, right? It says, we've been working with the people who, hold some power and sway and some relationship and knowledge about this. We're not just coming out of nowhere. It shows that you're part of this bigger picture conversation. So that's what the letter actually involves. And we'll share with you a template. We have some even more in-depth tips and tricks. We're not going to go all the way into the weeds right now, but we have lots to give you to support you to create this letter and make it as easy as possible. We also have a whole archive of example letters, so you don't have to make something from scratch. Claude actually is on this call, helped Polish Hill write a fantastic capital budget request letter last year, complete with pictures and tables and lots of really good thought and information. So that's in that archive. There are a lot of good things that you can draw on for support. Here's the timeline, looking at this slide of what your advocacy might look like. In January, now, really, you want to be identifying the projects that you want to request to be addressed. You might go on a walk audit or a bike audit. That's a walk or bike around your neighborhood to identify these problems, identify opportunities, gather some information. In March, it's okay to still be identifying your projects, but you want to be moving into gathering some data, some stories, really thinking about how are you going to make the case? How are you going to show, yeah, this is an important thing for council to address? In April, early May at the latest, that's a really good time to set up a meeting with your council person to discuss your ideas, learn their priorities, because you might be able to resonate and synchronize what you want with what your council person wants, right? Also find out how they like to receive budget requests. Each council person is a little bit different. So you can just ask, hey, what is a useful capital budget request letter for you to receive? I think there's at least one or two council people who prefer you to fill out a form, not even send a letter. I've seen that at least once or twice. So ask. That meeting is a great place. It might not even be with your council person. It might be with one of their aides or staffers, but it's still really important to set that up. By the end of May, then, submit your final letter to your council person. Again, copying Director of DOMI, your neighborhood planner, Bike Pittsburgh, relevant partners. If your letter gets sent in early June, it's okay, but we really suggest getting it in by the end of May so your council person has some time to digest it, think about it, maybe ask you some follow-up questions before they have to get their proposals in. In May and June, attend public meetings. That's likely when they'll be held. That's a good time to show up, ask questions, talk to the relevant people who are there from different departments. Hopefully your council person's even there and you can talk to them. There are usually 5 or 6 scattered throughout the city. So we'll let you know when those happen. Then there's not actually a ton to do on the capital budget specifically until the fall when the mayor announces his proposed budget, but you still have important work to do of just maintaining the momentum on your campaigns, a variety of tactics you can be doing in the interim. Happy to talk through what that could look like for your campaign in particular. Got lots of ideas. In the fall, attend those next meetings about the mayor's proposed budget. And even into November, December, after his budget's proposed, continue to lobby for your projects until your project is hopefully approved or you start the next cycle and make a request again. But it's not over until really the end of December when the budget is finalized. This is a lot, and I know there's a lot to learn. And this is not the only time that we're here to help. In fact, I wanted to just share this right now. We have a bunch of trainings coming up where you can, in March, at the end of March, we're going to be talking about how do you take all of the ideas you might have for campaigns you could run, projects you could work on, and focus on some effective campaigns. We're going to bring in a guest trainer, Carter Lavin from California. He's so good at helping people like think bold but realistically at the same time. So that'll be in March. In May, it's a little bit late to have to be starting to do walk audits for your capital budget, but we're going to teach you how to do a walk audit so that you can use that skill anytime throughout the year. And then June 1st, we have our strategies for winning campaigns training, which I hope to see many of you at. We take a deep dive. You walk away with a strategy. You walk away with clear next steps. I think Claude can attest. It's a very useful experience. If I can say so, she's nodding. So yes, I'm getting that affirmation. Come out on June 1st. You'll learn a lot. You'll walk away with some clarity about how to move forward. Whew, how are we doing? We doing okay? This is a lot of information. I just got some thumbs up. Ooh, even some fireworks. I love fireworks. Sweet. We got some tips. So I'm gonna give you some tips to hopefully make this clear, as easy as possible. First tip, drink water. Keep drinking water, keep breathing, keep sleeping. Those are really the most important tips. Tip 1, think big, ask big, keep your head straight, within reason, right? End of the day, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? So definitely have those big asks. For your capital budget request letter, though, you might feel like you have a lot of asks. We recommend 1 to 3 to really focus on, probably not more than 5, because it can just kind of turn into a muddy soup. Your council person doesn't really know what to prioritize. It's kind of harder to think through. Recommend at least one of those being a stretch, right? Something that's big, visionary. You might not even be sure is possible to get funded anytime soon, but you got to start asking for what feels impossible to make it start feeling possible. So start now with that stretch ask in your capital budget request letter. The big audacious parking protected bike lane that, is going to be a big slog, but it would be such a big difference if you had it, right? Start asking for that. And then have 1 to 2 more moderate asks that a little bit more palatable, easier to say yes to, easier to figure out and move forward. Over time, hopefully the stretch becomes a more moderate ask, right? Through your campaigning. And make sure your ask is relevant to city property, not state roads or privately owned land, such as sidewalks. Sometimes we get people wanting to submit capital budget requests for Penn Ave, where it's owned by the state. As much as we'd love to see change, the city just, they can't fund that because it's a state-owned road. So it's important to understand what the city can and can't do with a capital budget. Always happy to answer questions along those lines. Tip two, I've already mentioned this, but this is super important. It's to reference the mayor's priorities, criteria, and forms. So again, the mayor will announce a set of priorities most likely for the year, and you will make your case stronger if you can show that your request aligns with the mayor's stated priorities. For example, one of them this past year was creating connections between neighborhoods, right? And so if you can make the case for, yes, this bike lane, this sidewalk, this set of steps really improves mobility between these neighborhoods, use the language from those priorities, it'll really stand out against a sea of other similar requests. Likewise, there's a set of scoring criteria. It's a bit more wonky than the mayor's stated priorities. You can see an example of this on the website that we'll share with you at the end of the training, so you can kind of see what I mean. But this is what the analysts are using to actually put usually I think it's a 1 to 6 score next to various projects that helps weight them and helps make decisions. And it's really useful if you grab some of that language from the scoring criteria in your capital budget request letter to make it clear that, oh yeah, we're thinking about these things. There's also a form that your council person will fill out to submit to the mayor to make it easier for his office of the budget to digest. We can look at that form ahead of time. And if you craft your request letter to answer the questions in the form, it makes it a lot easier for your council person. And if it's easier for a council person, they're more likely to do something with your request and keep it more or less the way that you want it to. And finally, we have a long history of past budgets. So look at those and see what's been funded in the past so you can kind of help guide what's reasonable to ask for going forward. Tip three, use data to make your case. There are a bunch of tools available on our website. I won't explain all of these, but if you go to bikepgh.org/advocacy/resources, you can dig into maps, data sets, all sorts of things. You can even borrow our speed gun if you want to collect your own data, or you can always like take your own count of bikes and walkers and et cetera. Happy to help you think through that. Also want to note, you don't need to figure out how much a project is going to cost. It's not up to you. You don't have to be figure out the details of the budget as long as it's clearly over $50,000. Don't worry, you don't need to like itemize things and figure that out. Nobody's expecting you to be that kind of expert. Tip four, there are some existing plans that we already have in the city. We have the Bike Plus Master Plan that shows the proposed bike network, pedestrian safety action plan where the city has already decided some areas that need attention for improvement for pedestrians. A lot of neighborhoods like Homewood have developed plans that have already gone through the vetting process and gotten consent from the public. So find any of these that are relevant to your desired change and reference them in your request. You can also use these plans for projects beyond making a capital budget request. So if you have a plan, write to your council person and ask what they're doing with it and how you can help further the parts that are important to you. You can find these on the Engage page most often. If you want help finding them, if you have a plan, let me know. We can help you figure that out. Tip five, this is pretty straightforward. Find your people. You want to identify partners who want the same change that you do. Talk to them, name them in your letter, especially businesses, nonprofit organizations, maybe churches with impacted customers, employees, clients, members. Find your partners, find your people. Likewise, talk to your neighbors. You might get them to sign a letter or petition showing their support, record their stories of, why is this parent, why would they really benefit from a bike lane or an improved sidewalk or a better set of steps so that their kids can get to school? Grab those and be able to tell those to your council person. And likewise, consider who might be getting in your way. What can you do to either persuade them or demonstrate that their opinion is in the minority or it's not actually as big of an issue as they might be making it out to be? It's important to know that lay of the land and be prepared to talk about it effectively. And tip six, this is our last one. Be strategic about your ask. We generally suggest focusing on the problem and its impact in the capital budget and that something needs to be done about it, but staying a little bit more general about the solution, because at the end of the day, very few of us are engineers. So we think we may know what the best solution is, But that can backfire if we ask for something that's too specific that isn't actually doable and it gets rejected, right? Then nothing gets done about the problem. So for example, asking for traffic calming or a road diet might get you further than asking for a specific speed bump in a specific place that isn't actually feasible, because we're not engineers and we don't actually know exactly what goes into citing speed humps appropriately, right? Then once the money's allocated to address the problem, then you can advocate for the specifics. I will say sometimes it's just obvious that you need a specific piece of infrastructure like a protected bike lane, and you should ask for that very clearly. No qualms about that. So this has been a lot of information. Really what you need to focus on is a few next steps. Identify your projects, start thinking about your partners and your supporters in the next month. Set up a meeting with your council person very soon here to talk about their priorities, kind of share what you're thinking about. Submit your letter by the end of May. We're here to help, right? Please call me in. Happy to review draft letters, happy to think it through before you even start writing, whatever we can do. Once public meetings are announced, keep an eye on our newsletter, keep an eye on our website. We will let you know when public meetings are happening. If you're not already involved with your bike ped advocacy group in your neighborhood, now is the time to do that because a lot of them are already thinking about their capital budget request letter. If you don't have one in your neighborhood, we can talk about how to help you start one. So please feel free to reach out and we can get one started as best as possible. And yeah, this is our opportunity to show our caring for our city and show our values for the city and show our values for active transportation, to influence the change that we want and also to build this movement, to build power collectively for the change that we want to see across the city and grow that pie. And I'll leave it at that for right now. We're gonna put some links in the chat at the end of the presentation, so you have some resources to come back to. But for now, I'll open it up for questions. Yeah, Jacob, go ahead.
So for us at Complete Streets at Pitt, Pitt is divided like into 3 or 4 different council districts. Do you think we should send a letter or a form or whatever to each rep that reps us, or just to one? Or
You want to look at what projects you're asking for and target the project to the council person whose district it's in. But yeah, you might be sending a bunch of capital budget request letters. Chris?
Hey, hi. I appreciate this presentation. Thanks very much. I was wondering if you could do sort of a case study. I'm very interested in Serpentine Drive in Shenley Park. I've been following it for years. And I'm really happy to see that the city apparently is planning to close it fully to cars. I already submitted my comments on the Engage Pittsburgh site. But I'm just kind of wondering, what was the process that happened that led up to the city seeming to advocate for something that the bike community wants? How did we get to this point? Because I'm sure it's open to cars one way right now, downhill. So that really rankled me when that happened, because there was no public meeting. There was no request for input. That really drove me up a wall. The wall. But anyway, so how did that all happen?
Eric, do you have a brief?
I can give I don't know. I wasn't in all the meetings in the back, the back room, smoky room meetings.
That's what I'm afraid happened. Yeah, go ahead.
But my sense of what happened was, as we all, if you don't know what happened on Serpentine Drive, a paving truck, hit this antique or whatever historic wall and destroyed the wall. And so and it's on the cliff side, and so the city pretty promptly closed the streets to, because they didn't want cars to fall down the cliff. And the street was open to bikes and peds. And then as they were fixing it, they put a design in that allowed cars to access the road again, but only in the downhill direction and not in the uphill direction. It's a really weird design. It doesn't seem to really work for anybody. So I don't really know exactly how that how they came to their, their decision, but there was, something that like Pittsburgh had been pushing for since they've opened the cars again. We're like, come on, guys, let's get this,
Yeah.
let's get this closed. It's not really
Pick a
working for
lane.
I think the neighborhoods were pushing for it, but I think another big change was the council person changed. There was,
Amen. Yes,
you know,
indeed.
so council people really do hold a lot of power and can help make those decisions, and their, willingness to take some hits. I think the current council person was, maybe they knew somebody, didn't know the same person. I don't really know like that
Well,
part
that
of, I think that was a
yeah, I'm
part.
glad you mentioned that. I wonder about the DPW director, Chris Hornstein. How useful is it to reach out to like department heads? How often do you do that? He seems like a great guy, you know.
Yeah, DPW, but for this kind of stuff, we're really sticking with Domi because Domi is
Or
the
Domi, okay, right.
transportation people. Yeah, and so Seth did mention if you do submit a capital budget letter, it's always a good idea to CC the director of Domi on it.
I see, right. I saw that. Okay, great.
There are
All right.
some caveats, like, for example, in certain cases, sidewalks are under the purview of DPW instead of DOMI. Now, sidewalks are almost always the responsibility of the property owner. When it's the case of the city being the property owner, DPW usually manages those sidewalks. So, for example, around parks or parklets or playgrounds. So if, for example, there's a sidewalk up in Wind Gap Chartier City area where we're supporting a local group to advocate for that, they might actually copy the DPW director in their capital budget request for this sidewalk because it's around a park and that's DPW territory, not DOMI. But for the most part, we focus on DOMI with the kind of issues we're concerned about. Thanks,
Okay,
Chris.
great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
And these are the exact questions that we're here to help you work through.
Yeah. Other questions that folks have? Hear from Bruce and then Connor.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the one thing that I got two things. Well, the one is that 1, 2, 3 ask that you had mentioned. We're going through budget season at work right now, and we do that all the time. We always put our, here's our big ask, here's our medium ask, here's our small ask,
Yep.
and we outline what the impacts are of each. So if we don't get the big ask, here's what the impact of the middle ask is going to be, kind of under the guise of life is full of trade-offs.
Yeah.
So it really helps when you submit anything with that, anything in that way. But the second thing, I think more to who spoke before me, Chris. Uh the getting your council person on board is just so huge. For a long time, I mean, I've been in Greenfield for probably 30 years or close to it. And for the longest time, anytime we had to get anything done, we actually contacted Gilman in Squirrel Hill or in Shady Side,
Shady Side, yeah.
because he got stuff done. And like you would contact our rep in Greenfield and you'd
We're in
hear,
the same district, Bruce. You're
yeah,
quite
yeah, yeah.
right.
Yeah, Chris, you
Yeah.
know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, now I had a couple incidents on Murray Avenue, and this was about 3 weeks ago. I got in contact with Barb Warwick on a Sunday at like 1 p.m. via email. I had emails back from her at 2 p.m. and they actually hung a speed like a speed sign indicator on Murray Avenue
You.
3 days later. I was absolutely floored. I couldn't
Yeah.
even believe it. So really getting that council person on board is huge. And even I think even if you can't get a walk around, like my whole thing is biking. But even if you can't get a walk around, like I can send her video off my bike and she'll, that evidence is huge. I mean, I happen to carry a front and rear camera, so I can get front and rear video and send it to her and show her exactly what I'm talking about.
Nice.
Um,
I think that's a
yeah.
really I want to put a pin in that too. Something that you might have heard me say during the presentation is invite your council person on a walk audit. And, you probably heard me use walk audits in two contexts. One is go for a walk yourselves to understand the problems and kind of document the issues. That's just for you as advocates to do. The second type of walk audit is to then invite your elected officials, invite your representatives to go for that same walk with you and tell them the stories, show them the documentation, have them witness firsthand how things are moving in their community so that they can see it. Claude and the folks in Polish Hill did this fantastically with Deb Gross and actually got some small, but I think meaningful, quick wins just as a result of going for a walk with Deb Gross, a representative from Domi and from the mayor's office. So, it's really good to try to meet with your elected official, at least even better, get them out on a walk so they can see it firsthand. Connor, and then we're going to wrap up with Ben because I want to get to Eric's presentation and we'll open it up for more questions later.
So is there any way to navigate the issues that come up? I live on Center Avenue, I mentioned, and to the left of me, it's owned by the city. To my right, it almost immediately is owned by PennDOT, and the design becomes diabolical. And you can even see it in the city plans that have been posted. They are fairly ambitious everywhere, except on, they can't do anything. Is there any way to navigate that at all, or?
Yeah, I'll field this a little bit. Yeah, this is a notorious problem throughout the city. There are some maps that you can find to see exactly what's owned by the city and what's not, but it's a notorious problem, and residents aren't the only ones complaining. I often hear the city, either council people and Domi also complain about not being able to make the changes that they'd like to see on PennDOT owned roads that run through the city. So, a couple things I'm going to get to it in my section is, we've worked on some policy changes that help. But ultimately, the most direct way to really deal with PennDOT issues is to contact state reps and state senators, who are the ones who have control, who have some power, I should say, not control, but more power over PennDOT and the things that they're doing. That's been, it doesn't always work, but that's been one of the methods that has helped make some changes. We were dealing with this pretty strongly on Forbes Avenue in Oakland for a long time, and that's the section that eventually got some bike lanes on it. But we really had to go to our state elected officials to help with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ben?
Yeah, so I think you had said that like budget recommendations should be around like 50,000 or more dollars. And I know you said like, oh, don't worry about like calculating it and like how, budget breakdown, but I'm curious like what would be the approach if something you think would be below that threshold? Like for instance, not quite bike related, more I guess pedestrian related. It's like in the strip, when you get beyond the core, there starts to become a lot of issues with like trash and it's unpleasant and just gross because there's a lack of trash cans. And so I know that's something Strip District Neighbors wants, right? And I think it's a decent buy, but just some quick Googling, a trash can is like $1,000, which is a lot. So unless we're going to suggest buying, 50 trash cans, which I don't know, maybe that's reasonable, like we're not going to hit that $50,000 limit. So does that just become more of like just a generic non-budget related request, or what's the approach for that?
It's, it's interesting. It's likely not going to end up in the capital budget, but some of the tactics that you use that we're talking about are going to be the same. It's going to mean talking with your council person, asking them, what is the process for getting the trash cans? How do we do this? Can you go to bat for us? The pathway forward is not always so clear, but it usually involves getting the attention of your council person and identifying some next steps and keeping the pressure up on them because they got a lot of things that they're paying attention to. So it's important to keep their attention on the things that are important. Eric?
I'll just add one really quick. Literally have no idea how to get new trash cans in. I've never worked on that, but the example is interesting because that's one that would not be a good capital budget request because it also would add operating costs for the city. So if every new trash can, that means somebody has to go, get the trash and put it in the back of a truck, and that's more time, which would be operating budget. And so the point of the capital budget is it's not supposed to add to the operations of the city as well. So, but anyway, that's something we can talk through, but willing to talk that through, but I don't know the answer to right now.
Yeah. Claude, do you have something quick we can check in
Yeah, I
on?
just wanted to add about the walk audit. In addition to giving your council person the direct experience of whatever issue you have in your neighborhood, I found that it helped. Like, I had, outside of formal meetings, I'd never really chatted with my council person. And when you're just taking a walk, it's a really nice way to develop a less formal relationship, a little bit more intimate with your council person. And also at the same time, when there's a group of neighbors walking along the street with like clipboards and stuff, other neighbors who happen to be outside or walking their dogs or whatever see this, wonder what's going on, ask questions, sometimes join in, but are more aware that there's actually some movement happening about issues that they might be concerned about, and it gives them a sense of hope and a sense of something's happening, and maybe they'll join in. So it ticks off, for me anyway, it accomplished a lot of things.
That's such a good example. Thank you, Claude, for sharing that. I'm going to put in the chat for folks AARP's walk audit toolkit. So if you can't wait until our training on May 4th and want to learn about walk audits, follow that link, and you can learn everything that you'd ever want to know about how to do them and how to make them useful. Eric, it is your turn to shift gears just a little bit to talk about the paving schedule.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. And I'm not seeing the thing to share my screen on my little dots.
Let me make sure
Yeah.
you are co-host. Let me
I don't have the option to share right now.
Give me 1 second. I might accidentally have not turned on. Aha, yes. Now I allow participants to share screen. You should have the button now.
Not yet.
I then am going to make you the host. You're now the host. Now you should definitely have that power.
Okay, let me see. It's not on there. Unless it's in a different spot that I'm not finding. I'll tell you what, I can send you the link.
Yeah, is it in your drive?
Yeah, I'll just drop you the link. Sorry about this, folks.
It happens.
It was weird because it was there before I had to switch places in my house. Are you on your chat? Or I can just chat you actually through the thing.
Yeah, whichever. There it is.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know where that is.
All right.
But I will be quick because I see we're getting close to 7. So, hey everybody. I'm going to talk briefly about one other chunk of the capital budget and a different way to think about capital budget. So that's me and that's our team. Go ahead and next slide. So throughout the capital budget, the capital budget itself is pretty specific. There's often specific projects in there that it'll be like, we're going to put a sidewalk here. And if they change that in the future, that actually needs to go through legislation to change it. And they need to go through council to change pieces of past capital budgets and to reallocate money. So it's a pretty inflexible document. However, there are pieces of the capital budget. For instance, one that's just the paving budget. It's sort of like for lack of a better term, a bit of a slush fund, we'll say. It's not specific to what is going to be done. It's just we have allocated X millions of dollars for paving in general. And then it's up to the directors and council people and a bunch of horse trading and whatnot to figure out how and where things get repaved. But there are opportunities in there to sort of tag along with some of these paving projects to try to get some really small scale improvements as they repave the street, they have to go back, they have to put in paint, and so it's often not very expensive to make some other small changes, along the way. So, these are, a lot of these things can really lead to actually some pretty significant changes, for biking, walking, and transit users. And we're talking things such as better crosswalks, bump outs, maybe like an area, like marking out an area where, where a bus can pull into, or curb cuts, things like that. So really small scale that don't need a lot of engineering, and don't need a lot of community input, but the city can probably do using that bigger paving budget. So go ahead and next slide. So got some successes from this in the past. There actually have been some bike lanes that have gone in through this process, through the paving budget. Bike lanes are going to be a little bit harder to get in. You kind of need to have a little bit of knowledge on how that would work, and like whether the street can take a bike lane or not. But I'm just showing two examples of some bike lanes, one on Cedar Ave in the north side, and the other one on Phineas Street in the north side, both of which, after it was repaved, the city went in and added pretty simple bike lanes to it. It didn't change the parking situation. They were just able to squeeze the bike lanes in, as they repaved the street. Go ahead and next slide. I like Colombo, and Steph didn't know who Colombo was, which made me, which was an age gap of ours. I learned. But Colombo is, he's a detective. So I use him on here to show that you kind of need to do a little bit of detective work also to figure out, like what streets are going to be repaved. Because there's this bit of a chicken and egg scenario, is like you want to ask for things that are, on streets that are going to get repaved, but you don't know what streets are going to get repaved. So there's ways to help you figure that out, doing some detective Colombo work. And, first of all, the city has a website. You can monitor the paving schedule. They tend to post what's being paved a couple weeks out. So maybe a month out, maybe 2 months out if they're lucky. But we're constantly actively monitoring that and seeing if there's opportunities that pop up, as they post what streets are getting repaved. You want to make sure it's a city-owned street. City, like we just talked about, doesn't have a whole lot of latitude with changing PennDOT-owned streets. They have some, but not a lot. But making a city-owned street makes everything so much easier. Right around April, you want to mark in April. That's when they typically release the first batch of streets they're going to be repaving. The paving plants are closed right now, and they open in April. So they're not doing any paving until the paving plants reopen. And then use your gut. If the street's in really bad shape, there's probably a really good chance it's going to be repaved. You can go to the next slide. Wanted to briefly mention, we have what's called a complete streets policy in Pittsburgh. This was something that we pushed really hard for back in 2016 and succeeded. Basically, in short, it's a policy that states that all projects that the city does have to include, all road users, or have a really good reason why they can't. Again, this is a policy that I was alluding to earlier that does help with PennDOT. PennDOT is supposed to look at local policies and plans when they make their designs. So this stuff does help. Hopefully, if Churchill is, at least from Churchill, is still on here, hopefully we'll see a good complete streets policy come out of Churchill as a good way to help work with PennDOT as they make changes in your community. But anyway, the two relevant lines it's a really long policy, but is that complete streets shall be part of the larger connected network, and projects shall consider all modes in all phases. So all phases meaning repaving. And then it specifically points out this policy shall be applicable to construction of new public streets, the city's annual paving program, and large-scale utility work. So go ahead and next slide. So again, I'm not going to repeat stuff that Seth said. Seth gave some really good information, but it's kind of the same thing. You want to identify your problem. You want to like, if you have a really a section that you think is on the paving list, you think might make it on the paving list, you see some problems on there. Maybe it's something simple like you need some curb cuts on the corners, for instance. You want to identify the problem. You can check, the Bike Plus plan, the Ped Safety Action Plan, and like Seth mentioned earlier, other neighborhood plans. All of that stuff will add weight to your ask. It's always important to get you and your friends to 311 the problem. It creates a paper trail for that fix. We mentioned earlier, take pictures and videos and send those to or collect that stuff as you make your ask. You can look at crash history. DOMI has a crash map, and they're about to release a high injury network map, which will also be helpful to help you make your case. And then if you can demonstrate some community support, that'll only help you as well. And once you have sort of that case in place, then it's pretty much the same process. You want to engage your council people early and often. You want to every neighborhood has a city planner, which will also help you sort of guide you through the process of working through an issue. And then, of course, you want to make sure to also make sure that DOMI staff is aware of the problem. So you can do this by writing a letter. In your letter, make sure you let them know that the street is likely due for repaving, that the city will need to act fast. Tell your story about why you want the change to happen, if you have any findings, and make sure to mention that the complete streets policy exists. All of these things will add weight to helping you achieve these small scale but helpful improvements. And then one thing to really stress is a follow-up, especially like maybe you send a letter saying you're looking for some painted bump outs on a corner to prevent someone from parking on the corner. And then you see the street is in the repaving schedule. That's a great opportunity to follow up and be like, hey, remember my letter? Well, I see it's on the paving schedule. What's the status of that? Can we make sure to get this change in? Just remember that you're the expert in your community, and council people often are looking for these, for that expertise for you. And just to wrap it up for the sake of time, just I want a reminder and to reiterate that we're here to help you with any of these things. If you have a problem, we've been through some of these things, successfully and unsuccessfully over time, but we kind of know how the process works pretty well. So lean on us for that. And that's exactly why we're here, to help people. We can't handle all these problems ourselves. Oh yeah, you can go to the next slide if you want to see my face. We can't handle all these problems on ourselves. And this is exactly why we're doing this stuff, to help amplify the voice and get more people asking for these changes, because that's how this stuff's going to happen. So with that, I'll end there. You can open up for discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. I think what I'm really taking away there is very much tied in as to what I was talking about of as you're walking in your neighborhood, identifying problems, just kind of take a note. Oh, it would really be nice if we had a painted curb bump out here at least. And there are potholes all over this street. Let's start making a list of the changes we'd like to see in areas that might get repaved, so we can talk about that with our council person when we talk with them about the capital budget request letter, and say, by the way, this street might be repaved. Complete Streets exists. We should make sure that if that happens, some simple changes get made, and then, like Eric said, follow up. So, these two processes feed into each other, I think really well. I know Bruce had a comment or question from the chat, and then we'll hear from Chris. Two popular fellows in the Zoom.
Hey, guys, I really appreciate that last presentation, but I do have a question specifically around construction. So, and I don't think this is something that can necessarily be addressed to a specific council person, because I see this as kind of a systemic problem around the city. And that is that a lot of times when we get these construction projects, as a cyclist, I see two huge problems. One is that when they do road work, there's almost always a seam parallel to the road or parallel to the flow of traffic that happens to fall right where a cyclist would ride.
Yeah.
That's the first problem. The second problem is, and I saw this on Murray Avenue, and I've seen this before. Actually, I saw it on Shady. I've seen it in a bunch of other places where they do the cuts in order to do the utility work, and they leave a gap of about an inch, and it's a 90-degree cliff that if you don't have good lighting and you hit that in the dark as a cyclist, you're going to break a rim. I guarantee you're going to break a rim. And I mean, I've hit those at speed less than the speed limit in a car, and it's jarring. I can't even imagine what it's like on a bike if you hit that. And so I think it's a very systemic problem that the city really needs to talk with its contractors and basically say, you can't leave a 90-degree cut of that depth and expect cyclists around the city to be safe. You're going to cause a significant accident. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the use of steel plates. Very similar issue, but when you have a steel plate, and if it's the least bit wet and you're riding on slick tires, you really run the risk of skidding out. And again, significant accident. And again, I think it's a systemic problem that they're just unaware of the risk in what they're doing because everything is addressed to a vehicle, not to a cyclist.
Yeah, I'll address that really quick. It's a little outside the scope of what we were talking about today, but they often say the PWSA sometimes paves more streets in the city than the city does, is kind of like one of the running jokes. A lot of those problems are to defend the city a little bit, are often utility issues. The utilities are the ones who are cutting this up. The utilities are ones often leaving the plates. And I 100% agree with everything you said. And this seems to be like some problem that nobody seems to be able to solve. And I wish I knew how to solve it. I don't work for the city, so I can't solve it. We've brought it up a lot. I'll say that in terms of getting of holding the utilities accountable for their kind of botched jobs often for this stuff. But the city also doesn't have a good handle on it. That complete streets policy does talk about this a bit. It does specifically call out the utilities that they're supposed to do it. But again, the utilities are going to do what they're going to do. And they sometimes they have emergency stuff, which you got to give them a little bit of latitude for, but then they often have, stuff they're planning for, which that should kind of fall under policy. And, we have been mildly successful with seeing some of the botch jobs that the utilities might do. And you can 311 that, and I have seen the city actually follow up and send an inspector out and force the utility to fix some of those problems in the past. Now the steel plates, they're going to use steel plates, but I have seen, for instance, like people of 311, for instance, a steel plate might be higher up than it should be, and then they'll come in and add some asphalt in there. So there are minor adjustments that they can make, and it doesn't really answer the bigger question, but there are mechanisms for making it slightly better. And I wish I had a better answer than that, but it is an ongoing problem. Also, you see like the utilities often might repave, and it's like they just threw a bunch of chewing gum on it, and that kind of stuff. You can actually 311 and the city inspectors will come out. You can also they're supposed to put a little token whenever the utility repaves a section of street. It'll be like blue or yellow, and you'll see that embedded in the section. And so that'll give you also a little hint to help, in your 311 request, be like, PWSA did this, or you can even contact PWSA directly if you know who did it. So anyway, hopefully that was a little.
Chris?
Question? Yeah, you anticipated my question. I was going to ask if you ever work with PWSA to do these bike infrastructure things.
I can't say we've worked with PWSA on that. No, because we would always go through the city to, PWSA is supposed to look at it. PWSA, or, utilities, I should say, are supposed to look at that, but they're often there just to try to go in, do their work, and then they are supposed to put it back how it was found. So if it isn't a bike
But
lane,
as you noted, I mean, we do know ahead of time, like when they're going to do a line replacement on a street. And that's kind of the holy grail, that you get that synergy. When the street's going to be torn up, there's the opportunity to make an improvement.
100%.
Okay. Yeah. That's the holy grail.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to address one other thing that Bruce mentioned. Sometimes that line that you're talking about is an underground uh, streetcar track that they haven't pulled all the streetcar tracks out, and they're slowly getting through that. But sometimes that's the reason that line exists right where you want to ride. So that's where the streetcars were, and it offers like basically a lever, for that spot. And as cars go over it, it cracks in that spot where the car tracks or used to be. And I don't know if it's still the case, but I've heard that like the city doesn't own those, and it's like hard for them to pull it out because some train company from 100 years ago still owns it or whatever, but they've been pulling them out if they actually dig down and get to that level.
Yeah. Thanks. Connor?
I saw in the bike lane examples that you showed us, Eric, that we weren't able to get parking protected lanes there. Is there a reason that a parking protected bike lane is more complicated than paint?
Sorry, I missed. I don't know if it was my internet or yours, but I didn't catch the question.
Oh, okay. I saw that in the bike lane examples you showed us, they were not able to get parking protection on those despite there being parking. Is there a reason that's more complicated and we can't get those on repaving?
Yeah, I mean, so the point of the slide or my presentation was more for really short, easier fixes. So something like that would be more of a capital budget request because it's going to require a higher level of engineering, of surveying, community input, et cetera, whenever they do a more complicated project. So something like especially like a parking protected bike lane, that's not something you'd probably try to get in a repaving project. That even aside, it's parking protected bike lanes are quasi legal in Pennsylvania at the moment.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's complicated, which I can go into briefly, but essentially they're not really legal in Pennsylvania because of a technicality in the vehicle code. We've been working for years to change it unsuccessfully. We're still pushing. There's a bill to change it.
This year's the year.
City has a little. What's that?
This year's the year. I can feel it.
Yeah. The city has a little leverage if they own the street to do it, but in general, it's not as easy as we'd like.
Okay.
But with that said, the point of the trying to use the paving schedule is for more easier, short, like smaller, less intensive projects to get done.
Okay. Thank you.
And of course, Ben has the bill number, I assume committed to memory, HB 1283.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Any other questions about the paving schedule, about capital budget requests? Jacob, I see you have a hand.
Yeah, I was wondering like what we're talking about the city council right now and talking about them. Is there anything that we should do, like talking to either the county or the state reps that we have? Maybe even just sending a letter about that HP 1283 or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, as far as paving schedule and projects, the only places where you'd really want to contact city or state or county is if it's a state or county owned road. And that link that Seth posted earlier shows you which streets are owned by who. County doesn't own too many streets in the city. They own a lot more in the outer municipalities. They own some bridges in the city. But so they're often not very much of a target for us for this kind of stuff within the city of Pittsburgh. And then as far as the HB 1283, so where that's at, it passed the House. It's now on the Senate side. and we're waiting on the Senate Transportation Committee to take it up. And as soon as we're in very frequent discussions with Philly about this. And when the time comes, that makes sense. We'll have a, hopefully we'll have an action alert if it comes to that. So, unless you, the person who is the target right now, who has the total influence on this, is a senator from Johnstown, PA, Senator Wayne Langer Hulk. So if you're in that district, especially, or have friends or family in that district, ask them to write him about it. But right now, that's kind of where it's at. And we think once he takes it up, it'll pass. But he's the sole reason it's not passing at the moment.
Thanks, Eric. Bud, you got a question?
Yeah, just briefly, are you aware of a map that indicates which stretches of which road are state and which are city? Like, for example, Bigelow is mostly state road, but I suspect parts of it are city because parts of it go through like residential neighborhoods, like really on both sides there's homes.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of streets that are state that are still residential, like what's the one in Squirrel Hill? Sorry, I'm flaking on it right now. But Seth posted a link there. If you just Google who owns my
Yeah.
There's the county puts out a pretty nice map, easy to use map, and then it'll tell you exactly which street is owned by which entity.
Okay, and is it a general rule that sidewalks along state roads are also owned by the state?
No, the state won't maintain any sidewalks. That's still the responsibility of the property owner next to it.
What about sidewalks that are along like just city lots or abandoned lots or whatever?
That would be, if it's a city lot, then the city is responsible for it.
If it's abandoned, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Really
That
tough.
explains. Okay. Thank you.
It's real tough.
Yeah.
Thanks for so many good questions, everybody. I love it. So let's just we're not going to do breakouts because we had so many good questions. But what I would love people to do is take 2 minutes right now and just reflect for a moment. What is something that you're getting out of this training today? Something that you're taking away with you? And what is the next step that you would like to take yourself, given what you've learned here? So take a moment for that right now. Maybe write it down. Then I'm going to ask you to share. And I'll add a question too, is there any support you'd like? So let's hear from, 2 or 3 of you. What's something you're taking away from our training today and a next step? Maybe from someone we haven't heard from yet. Tanvi, Larry, Evan, Tess. What are you getting out of this?
I can share something. So I've been in the Shady Side Complete Streets like Google group and Slack group, just kind of silently lurking for a while.
Nice.
And I'd say just from what I've observed of that group, they already do a lot of the stuff that you guys mentioned in your presentations. So I feel like becoming more involved with that group is probably going to be my next step for getting more into the advocacy stuff, because they already have a lot of that organized, and just to be like an extra person to help out with stuff, I think would be really useful.
Yeah, go get plugged in with them. They do really great work. Definitely get on their email list if you're not already, and yeah, go to a meeting. They're all super friendly, and you'll have a good time. Get out of just lurking. There's
Yeah,
more to do than
for
lurk.
sure.
Thanks for sharing that, Evan. Who else? What are you getting out of this? What's the next step? Maybe some support you'd like to request. Don't make me call on you. I will. Larry, what do you got?
Yeah, this is Larry. It just really along the same lines as what Evan just said. Getting more involved with an existing group. In my case, on the south side, I recently reached out to them to sign up to them after your advocacy class. And seeing what projects they're already looking at and what issues they're already looking at, not trying to duplicate efforts, but to build upon what they're already doing, and to add support to those efforts.
Awesome. Well, now you're equipped and skilled, and so when they talk about capital budget things, when Bill and Thomas down there are talking about capital budget requests, you'll know what they're talking about, and you can say, "Oh, hey, let's think about that thing that Seth said or Eric said at the training. Maybe we haven't thought of that yet." So please bring your knowledge to them, Larry.
Will do.
Awesome. Tess, Tanvi, Elise.
Yeah, I can go. I've been kind of working a little bit with the Pittsburghers for public transit group. Also in the lurking phase and trying to learn more about advocacy in general. Also, worked or support as many of the bike PGH events as I can, but also looking to get more actively involved in that. So learned a lot today, and especially about getting your city councilor involved. That was new information to me, that you could just go on a walk with them and show them what your concerns are. So I'll definitely keep that in mind in the future. Thank you.
Definitely ask. And I know Pittsburghers for Public Transit is looking at using this tactic a little bit more too. One of their organizers, Nicole, was hoping to make it tonight. She wasn't able to make it. I expect she'll watch the recording. So I'm sure they would appreciate any support you can offer, Tanvi, on
bus audits. They're doing the bus audits.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, hopefully that'll yield some capital budget requests specifically. Yeah, Jacob.
There is one tomorrow.
There is. Did you share the detail?
I don't remember the details exactly, but I saw, believe it was Nicole at the Summerlee event today, and she was mentioning it.
Cool. Yeah, they're taking kind of the idea of walk audits and applying it specifically to bus shelters. So what's working, what's not working, what could be improved around our bus infrastructure, especially making sure people can walk from their house to the bus shelter, and using that to generate some ideas for advocacy. So yeah, they're doing some really cool work, and we're glad to be partners with them. Anyone else have a takeaway or a next step or a support request to share?
Yeah. Hey, Seth, this is Elise. Again, I'm not in Pittsburgh, I'm in Churchill, and I've just recently become involved in that advocacy, the Active Transportation Steering Committee. And right now they're in the gathering information phase. So I really got out of this is like, what is the entire process? So what is the process that the consulting company they're leveraging is using to go get the money? Then now they got the grant. Now they're trying to figure out, what do we want to go do? And so they're, actively reaching out to the community and the residents and saying, okay, what are some of the issues that you're seeing in the community? That's the phase we're in now. We've just put a survey out that we're asking residents to take. We just had our community meeting last night, got some feedback there. So now they're taking all that and compiling it. And then the committee will meet here in a couple of weeks to say, what do we want to go work on? Cool. Yeah. So I just felt like I do I manage in an organization. I manage a project management office. So like I know project management, but I don't know it from the public sector. I know it from the private. So this was really, really educational for me just to learn how funding and stuff works in the city and government area. So
good. I'm glad you got some stuff out of it. Keep us posted how things go in Churchill. I know Eric's plugged in with some of that work, and like I said, Swissville's following in your footsteps. Hopefully.
Oh, I love it. If we can connect these communities, I think it's great for biking. So in Washington, obviously too.
That's the dream.
When you guys were talking about sidewalks, I'm like, oh my gosh, they have sidewalks? I'm like, we don't have those.
That's true. Poor Churchill. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, sidewalks.
I'm gonna let me see if I can find this. There's a tool that I want to share with you all since we're talking about walk audits so much, and now we're talking about sidewalks. There's a tool called Project Sidewalk that I've been getting very excited about, which basically enables you to do virtual walk audits using Street View, Google Street View, and you can tag everything from missing curb cuts to bad signage to cracked sidewalks. And it generates a map. And when I learned about this, I was like, wow, it'd be really cool if that existed in Pittsburgh. And I go to their list of cities that they're set up in, and they're set up in Pittsburgh. And so they have a Pittsburgh server. I was actually just talking with their techs last week. They have the ability to turn on neighborhoods all over the city and actually all over the county, including Churchill, at least, if you want to get it turned on. It's the kind of thing that would be perfect for a community group to have a party, have everybody bring their computers and, just work through a couple of streets in the neighborhood. You can actually choose which neighborhood you want to focus on if you scroll down on the homepage there, and you just pick a neighborhood and say, click here to complete this neighborhood or help complete this neighborhood. So it's a really cool tool. I imagine if we get it built out, we can share the data then with elected officials, with DOMI, et cetera. So just know that that's kind of a tool in your toolkit. I have extended the offer to whichever neighborhood completes their neighborhood first. We could talk about throwing a pizza party for them. And Shady Side might not qualify because somebody else already did all of yours, but Pathview already came in and gathered data for Shady Side. But check it out; it's a really cool tool. Poking around even if you're just looking for something to do. You can kind of it's kind of a fun, almost gamified way to do a walk audit. So check that out. Anything else, folks, before we go here? Awesome. I'm really grateful for y'all. Oh, Claude?
Can you include all these great links in the follow-up email with the link to the recording?
I will include all of them in the follow-up email. I have also put all the most important ones in the chat.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Drop them again one more time, but yeah, they'll be in the follow-up email. This is going to get posted to YouTube as well.
Awesome.
And we'll have the links and stuff on there. Our advocacy webpage, bikepgh.org/advocacy. Go over to resources. There's tons of stuff from maps to tips on how to do capital budget requests. I mean, really, lots of good stuff in there that's worth referencing and using. And then sign up for a booster call if you want to talk shop about strategy or talk shop about this. We do a monthly, and if you can't make one of those, just email me and we can have a one-on-one conversation. I'm here to help. Eric's here to help. We want you all to be successful. So, yeah, thank you all. I know you're going to go forth and do good work. I look forward to seeing you out there. By the way, if you're not on our Slack already, get on that too. I'll include the link in our in the follow-up email, but that's just a great way to be kind of talking to the community of bike advocates. We have over 150 people on there who are doing cool advocacy work around the city and talking shop about all sorts of things on a daily basis. So join us. Awesome, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.